So, mayoral candidate Jeff Davison, thank you for joining the Canadian podcast and the Election Calgary series. I appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me. This is great.
Well, Jeff, why are you running for the mayoral candidate when you could stay in the council and be comfortable there?
You know, I've always thought of Calgary as being a place of open doors and open opportunity. And I think going forward, we've got some big challenges in our city. And for me, I've lived here all my life. I've got 3 kids, and I want my kids to have a bright future here. I think the next generation is going to be able to go anywhere on earth, but we want young people to choose to stay in Calgary because they want to, not because they need to. And for me, I think that's really one of the biggest priorities going forward.
Oh, for sure. When you look at homelessness in our city, is there a way to mitigate that or reduce it in a way? We go by the drop-in center, it's just getting busier and busier.
I think one of the biggest challenges we're going to face as a city is everything is going to be about post-COVID-19 recovery. And I think that's everything from homelessness all the way through to the economy. We really have to think about the next decade and how we're going to turn our city around. And I think, part of that is that we've got to get back to enabling people. We have to think about providing opportunity in our city. We have to think about where are we going to grow and what sectors are going to take us there. And so technology plays a big role. And you start to ladder all of these things back and think about how do they all come together to work together. And homelessness is going to be a big problem. A lot of Calgarians are out of work. We've seen, I think, a disproportionate amount of downturn here in Calgary. Everybody sort of globally has been affected by the downturn in the economy and COVID. But when you think about just the negative sort of pressures on the energy industry here in Alberta, that's forced a lot of people out of work. And so it's really thinking about proactively, how do we start moving people from maybe energy jobs into something different? How do we port those talents over? We do know that Calgary has a highly talented and young workforce. We've got to be able to capitalize on those opportunities, but we also have to think about what does opportunity look like going forward in an equitable sense? And how do we help put some of our most marginalized people back to work?
You're not only focused on today's generation, but tomorrow, the youth. Why is that so important to you?
I think the youth movement in our city, I think often when we talk to young people about elections, we tend to think about how do we get them to vote in an election. And for me, this election is really about how do we get them involved in this election, because this city is about them. We have to fix a lot of problems for tomorrow, but we have bigger problems down the road that we really need to start addressing. I had a guy say to me the other day, 30 years ago when I went to the University of Saskatchewan, people were talking about Calgary. It was the place to be. Nobody wanted to be in Saskatchewan. Things were happening in Calgary, and so people were going there. And he said, I came home the other day, and his son, who's in second year university, said, I don't think I want to be here. Things are happening in Toronto. I want to go to Toronto. That's a big challenge for us when we start hearing about that placemaking component in a different sense, right? Like, kids are not moving to Vancouver and Toronto because it's cheaper. They're going there for different opportunities. They're going there for a different way of life. They're going there for the place sort of component of why. And we need to think about what is the type of city we're building for the future, and what is going to keep people here because they want to be here, and sort of reinvigorate that entrepreneurial spirit and that excitement, and keep people here, like I say, because they want to be here, not because they need to be here.
No, for sure. When you look at the energy sector and it's ever so changing, where can we
Yeah.
put displaced citizens of our city? Or where do you see them being placed?
When it comes to energy, again, remember that a lot of folks in the energy industry right now are highly educated. And so that means we have opportunity to move them into other sectors. And so we've worked on a number of programs through Calgary Economic Development now, where we take out of work oil and gas people and move them into more technology play roles. And so thinking about, a lot of those bigger startups that have happened in Calgary, thinking about companies like Adabotics, which was really formed by a group of out of work oil and gas engineers. It's thinking about how do you move people from one sector to another. But at the same time, I think we have an incredible opportunity here to think about what does Energy 2.0 look like for Calgary, right? We've always been sort of a global leader in all things energy. And do we have an opportunity to start partnering with the federal government to say, look, most of our big companies here in Calgary, they don't want to be oil and gas companies for the next 5 years. They want to be energy companies for the next 200 years. And so how do we start leveraging some of that green and clean tech money that the government of Alberta or the government of Canada is starting to put out? How do we move that into Calgary and start to think about what does the next generation of energy look like? And can Calgary be a true leader in that?
You've been instrumental in, well, the arena. Are you happy with the outcome?
Yeah, I mean it's exciting for me, you know. And again, when we think about the event center, this is not just about a hockey deal. This is about leveraging our ability to build an entire district and truly expand our tax base, not our tax rate. And so, thinking about our downtown challenge, our economic challenge, I look at the event center not just as a building. You know, right now I think about our downtown challenge. We have about 30% vacancy downtown. We've got to get more people down there. We've got to get more people living down there. And so that comes twofold. You know, we have to build the places people want to live downtown. We also have to do programming in a downtown area where people want to be. And so if we can kind of combine that live, work, and play attitude, I think we can be successful again. And when we look at our opportunity in Calgary, I mean, again, no other North American jurisdiction has the downtown available land masses that are open for development that Calgary has. And so it's an incredible opportunity for us going forward. Where's the building at right now in terms of, am I happy with it? You know, I think taking our time to do this right and really evaluate the type of dollars going into this building and the type of programming that's possible, I think this has turned out to be a better deal than we ever thought of. And so, you know, we've got a private partner who's now accelerating their funding into the district. It tells me because they believe in the overall program, you know. And again, for everybody, that this isn't just about a building; it's about building an entire district and frankly, bringing our downtown back to life.
Yeah. That whole area, I mean, East Village, Victoria Park. I'm really excited as a Calgarian to see all this happening, and I got to thank you for being a part of the solution here. So it's been exciting.
Well, it is exciting. I mean, we've talked about this in Calgary for decades, right? You know, you think about the Victoria Park area right now. You know, it's kind of, I think Rick Bell always said it best. You know, it's currently home to the world's most least impressive parking lots, and I agree. It's one of those. It's a big challenge for us, but it's also one of our biggest opportunities for us. And if we can start to be successful in the Rivers District doing what we did in the East Village, I think it's an incredible opportunity to capitalize not just on, you know, the billions of dollars of private sector investment that we can attract into the area, really creating something special for Calgarians, right? The place we want to go to, the place you want to see concerts and festivals and you know, engage with. And ultimately, I think if we're successful, it'll help change the narrative of local music in Calgary as well, because I think this is an opportunity for us to almost go from startup stage to main stage for local artists.
It's almost, there's irony here where we're a tech startup, you know, like you said, the seed capital, the angels, the understanding where we're heading. This is all a beautiful time, and I think that's why this election is so important. I know we've heard that before, but this time specifically, the role of being a mayor this time around is gonna be a little different. I think the pressure, the stake is different. What are your thoughts? Are you ready to take that on, that pressure?
Yeah, you know, I think this election is truly a defining moment for Calgary. We can either grow our economy or we can decay like Detroit did. And if we don't get this right, I think we could lose absolutely everything we've worked so hard to gain. And so, you know, when I think about the challenges of the mayor's role going forward, I'm running because I know what it's going to take to make sure we succeed as a city.
What do you have as a mayor when you look at the other individuals that are running? What do you have that, you know, accelerates you forward?
You know, I look at the landscape and I think no one else in the mayoral race has a track record of success. You know, my opponents have frankly never gotten a project over the finish line. And so, you know, I look at the landscape right now as people either wanting to mindlessly cut and make our city a shell of what it once was, or needlessly be antagonistic with other orders of government, which only results in endless fighting and gridlock. Um, for me, uh, I just personally have a track record of trying to get things done, and I don't think any other mayoral candidate can say they have that sort of collaborative leadership that I have. Because frankly, I think I want to put an end to the endless bickering. Right? It leaves projects in limbo. It wastes money and time. Well, all these important issues like homelessness, like property taxes, like our economy, all go unaddressed. And I'm running to be the mayor because I want to change that and get council functioning again.
Mental health is on the rise, and coming September, things don't look like they're going to be as bright as we were hoping.
Yeah.
How do we ever help these individuals out? And what are ways that you believe, mayoral candidate, that you could do that?
Well, I mean, 2.5 years ago, we put $25 million into the city's mental health and addiction strategy. And that's really a starting point to figure out how, as a city, we can stop throwing money at problems we haven't been able to solve in decades. And so, the framework was really set up on a number of these things to start thinking more proactively about how we make investments into things like mental health and addiction, into community safety frameworks, thinking about the problem we want to go and solve proactively, and then we'll come through and fund the programming necessary in order to deliver it. And so I look at it as mental health and addiction is, it's not going to go away anytime soon. It's in fact going to be a bigger and bigger issue in society. And so thinking about how we can more proactively get in front of it and start to make things like investments in outcomes. I get tired of people saying, well, why are we spending money on these things? Why are we throwing money away? For me, it's about where do we need to invest, because every investment has a return, whether that's a social return, whether that's an economic return.
Mhm.
We as a city need to be investing in outcomes so that we get a return, period. And that's what I think we're doing with things like the mental health and addiction strategy.
Mayoral candidate Jeff Davison, do you see that council needs to be trimmed, or city of Calgary's committees need to be reevaluated here?
Well, I think it's really about finding efficiencies. For me, I've never been one to say, let's just arbitrarily cut 25% of the budget and that'll fix the world. It doesn't fix anything we're doing. And frankly, it's nonsensical. For me, I look at how do we promote efficiencies and investment. And so thinking about, the City Save program was a great way that this year we saved $90 million. This year and next year, we'll save another $75 million after that. It's delivered a negative tax rate in a pandemic. That's never before happened in Calgary, pandemic aside.
Mhm.
And so thinking about ways that we can start to think about, as a municipality, how do we continue to be more efficient each and every day, not just thinking about it every election cycle when it becomes a talking point that we need to address. And so I think, going forward, where we have a world of shrinking tax dollars, we're seeing a lot of unemployment happen in our city. We've got to be smarter about the things we're investing in, because we know that Calgarians really value the services we provide, but we know it comes at a certain price point. And so we've got to be able to maintain that. Part of our challenge is going to be maintaining that while we continue to grow. And so if we start to think about our economic strategy, for instance, our downtown recovery strategy, if we're successful in turning our economy around, and we're successful at putting people back to work, and we're successful at helping clean up our streets, Calgary is going to be moving towards a city of 2 million people in the next 15 to 20 years. And so we have to think about, as we continue to accelerate in growth, how are we going to be able to continue to provide great services to Calgarians at a price point? And there's going to be a lot of tough conversations going forward about, what do we want to see more of and what do we want to see less of as a city.
For sure. You're a candidate, and I was actually talking to someone in a podcast recently, and he actually mentioned, you're a great candidate to run as mayor, but it's going to be interesting to see because you're so in the center and open-minded to both sides of people, and saying,
Yeah.
you'll hear it out. You don't need to pick a side. You don't need to be in a box, just like Calgary doesn't need to be in a box. Have you always been this person? Did
Yeah.
you?
I look, I've even before being elected, I have never played left to right politics. I could care less about the extremes, right? I care about Calgarians. And I think, when it comes to the city, you have to be very proactive about what's best for Calgarians and all Calgarians, not just sort of this or that type of group. Let the parties play party politics. This is a city and we have to care about each and every Calgarian, because frankly, Calgary doesn't recover if every Calgarian doesn't recover.
What are you seeing that Calgarians want as we shift towards September and everything is changing so rapidly?
Yeah, everything is changing rapidly.
No
But
pun
Calgarians,
intended.
yeah. Well, I mean, I think we're part of the beauty of being in an election cycle right now is talking to folks about what do they want, what do they value. I think overwhelmingly folks value good services here in our city, and one of the biggest things they value is safety. Safety is absolute paramount to living here in Calgary. They value things like affordability and being able to live a good life and earn a good wage here in a city where they can still afford to take their kids to the zoo on the weekend, and we can still afford to maybe go to the mountains once in a while. I think those are some of the beautiful things about Calgary, is that there's just so many jurisdictions across North America that can't say the same. They have decaying safety programs. They don't have affordable living. Uh, I think we've got a great balance here in Calgary. And I think that's ultimately what I'm hearing from a lot of Calgarians is they want to keep that balance. They want to be able to keep taxes low, but at the same time, they value libraries and they value rec centers and things for their kids to do.
You tweeted something recently that kind of hit home, actually, because I have close friends as well that have kids, and you have three young ones. Are you worried to put your kids back into school in September with everything that's been going on?
Um, well, I mean, your job as a parent is to never stop worrying anyway. So this is just something else you worry about. I think I got to hand it to a lot of the schools and the teachers. At the local level, they did it right, and they're concerned with everybody's kids. They're concerned with their jobs and their own safety, and so that tends to prove good things can happen when we think about what we need to be driving towards. My kids have felt safe in school. They still like to wear masks when we go out places just because that makes them feel safer. And I think that's a good thing. Uh, I think the downside of not being in school, the mental health side of not being there, has been far more detrimental than their fear of COVID. And so I think it's a balance, right? I think we have to think about what's best for our kids, but at the same time, each parent is going to have to make that decision for their own family. For us, when we repealed the mask bylaw, it didn't mean we're throwing out our masks. It meant, we wear masks when we feel there's a safety concern that we need to. I still feel like taking my kids out, 2 out of 3 cannot be vaccinated yet. So when they're in public, they're generally wearing masks as well. But I think going back into the schools, I think it's important that we continue to have the right protocols and procedures to ensure that kids can be in school, because I think that's far more beneficial to them than mental health challenges that they had when they were at home by themselves.
Right. I think a lot of people are a little worried about this TTI, which is tracing, tracking, and isolating.
Yeah.
It's scary, especially the tracing, the testings, and yeah.
Yeah, well, and it's I think there's two things here, right? I mean, I think by advocating for continuing in testing, I think what we're saying, data is important, and we want to ensure that we remain aware of the situation that's going on around us. The biggest concern I have is that why are we in a situation where we don't want to self-isolate if they have COVID? I mean, only just over 65% of the entire province right now has been vaccinated or fully vaccinated. That's a large percentage of the province that hasn't. And so, I think if we are going to ensure that we keep businesses open and ensure we don't have to put mandatory mask bylaws in place, we have to be doing our part to ensure that if you're sick, you're staying home, and that the message stays consistent, and that we're monitoring the data. And so people for COVID is still an important thing to be doing if we want to keep our economy alive.
No, for sure. What do you think we could do if you're mayor to attract people into our city?
Well, I mean, I think that's the golden challenge, right? And it's something certainly am not focused on just because I'm running for mayor. It's something I've been focused on for the last
Yes.
4 years.
Yes, yeah.
When we think, again, a transitioning downtown, when we think a transitioning economy, what does that mean? And I think for a long, we've talked about economic diversification, not just in Calgary, but in the province. And, as we see the peaks and valleys in energy hit and miss the province, it tends to change the narrative a little bit. And what we've tried to do is just let's maintain a consistent narrative around what does diversification look like. And so if we're going to continue to attract people to Calgary, I think there's four things that we really have to get focused on. So place, obviously building the right place with the right amenities that people want to be in and can afford to be in. Thinking about business environment. It's great to have some of the lowest corporate tax rates out there, but we have to think about all the other things that make businesses want to be here. And does the city have the right tools in their toolbox to continue to attract more businesses at the local level, and not just attract more, ensure that we keep businesses in our city so that we're not seeing them shut down or leave the jurisdiction. And then we have to think about interchangeably talent and innovation. And so really thinking about when we move technology companies into Calgary, yes, they come here because there's, affordable leasing. Yes, there's availability of space. Nobody comes to Calgary because they ask about taxes. The first question these technology companies are asking us are, I need to move from 1,000 people to 4,000 people, and I have 24 months to do it. Do you have the available talent to ensure I can scale up my business? And so that's where we have to work a lot closer with the province to ensure that our post-secondaries are actually putting out the right amount of talent that these companies are requiring in order to facilitate growth in our city, because that's going to be the key driver going forward. Part of it too is going to be that I think when it comes to technology, we used to think that technology was a sector, and it's not a sector. It's something that's ingrained in every sector. And so how do we think about really advancing technology, not just in Calgary, but in the province, by kind of ensuring that Calgary and Edmonton can work together as a bit of an innovation corridor? We've got a lot of AI technology happening in Edmonton. We've got a lot of that more IT service-based stuff happening in Calgary. But it's going to require all of our post-secondaries to have an output of talent that is able to help these companies grow.
And our agri-tech sector is booming, and it's exciting to see all the cool things. I mean, that was on the website of the Calgary Economic Development, and it's a really exciting time. I'm excited for the future.
You think about aerospace, you think about agriculture, you think about pharmaceuticals, you think about everything, all the way including creative services. And so the film industry here in the province, and just that acceleration, it's all of those things together that we're going to need to pull every lever possible to ensure that we have economic activity and economic change happening in the province.
Right. Before we end off here, what are your thoughts on how we can improve the arts community and the arts scene here in our city?
Well, I think that's that placemaking component to talk about, right? It's everything from amenities to affordability, and what are we doing as a city that makes our city interesting and makes people want to be here, not need to be here. And so, for me, I think the creative services industry is a huge benefit to Calgary. We have moved the needle significantly on that industry coming back to the point where we almost have more work here coming into the local area in terms of filmmaking than we have people available to do the work. And that's a really good problem to have. It tells you that we worked very well with the province to ensure that we set the right regulatory environment to ensure that we have incentives to get people here. But now it's up to us to show we have the talent necessary that can grow the business, that we've got opportunity, that we can capitalize on all the reasons why people want to be here. So everything from having a local film center to the scenery we have here. All of those things are going to matter in telling the Calgary story to Hollywood. And it's something we've been doing for 2 years. And I'm very proud to say we've been very successful at doing it. This will be the start this year. It will be sort of the next 2 years will be the biggest years on record for film in Calgary, for Hollywood film in Calgary. I think we've got over 20 projects now coming in, and that's incredibly impactful, because it's not just the actors that are getting, or the local actors that are getting, it's a lot of tradespeople that are actually work on these sets, and it's going to make a big impact on our local economy.
Well, those small towns, the makeup artists, it just trickles down.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's the good growth stories that we want to be telling, right? I mean, on an economic side, we're going to move from about $180 million worth of impact this year or last year to, I think, just under 500 million this year. And I think we're on a trajectory here where we could grow this to be $1 billion a year business here in Calgary, which is amazing.
It is. It's 11:30. So, Mayoral candidate Jeff Davison, what do you have as a message that you could leave Calgarians with, and why should they vote? Why should they look at some of your policies. And oh, here we go. It says 10 minutes on my end too, so perfect.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think this is a critical election for all Calgarians. You know, again, we either have an opportunity to move forward and take our city into the next decade and grow and create benefit to all our citizens, or we can decay like Detroit and set the clock back by 30 years. And that's not something I'm interested in doing. I'm interested in looking at ways we invest in our city, invest in our people, and move our city forward. But it's going to be a challenge. And without the right leadership at the table, everything we have worked for over the past 4 years, I think, is in jeopardy without the right leader. And we're going to need somebody who has a proven track record of getting things done, a proven track record of collaboration. Because remember that although we often desire change when elections come around, whether we want change or not, it's coming this time. We'll have at least 10 members of council turning over. And opportunity is in front of us right now. And if we delay for 1 to 2 years, well, it takes a new council time to figure out how they're going to get things done and reprioritize things. The opportunity will have walked away from us by then.
What do you think about investments in our city?
Look, I think, you know, again, I'm hyper focused on accelerating investment back into Calgary because I think we have to create the jobs that our children are going to want to do. And that's why I'm very focused on 4 pillars: place, talent, innovation, and business environment. And I think, you know, ultimately, what you've seen from me in the last 4 years is really what I'm all about: finding opportunity, delivering value and desired outcomes, bridging gaps, replacing dysfunction with collaboration, and getting people to say yes. I always say it's super easy to say no to everything. It's really hard to have to show your homework and say yes to things. And more importantly, getting your colleagues to say yes and get them invested in programming. Because ultimately, that's what having a vision is all about. It's a vision that has to work for everyone. And so, you know, I think about all of those things, and I think Calgary is the best place to live anywhere. And I'm running to keep it that way.
Thank you again very much.